3 years ago. I bought this van. This guy calls me up and says, Kerry, I got this van. I know you need a van because I was using my truck at the time. And an extended cargo van is, the old Ford, Dodge, whatever. They're really nice because you're sheltered from the rain. You can haul more than in a regular truck without needing the trailer. A lot of good advantages. And, uh, you know, he was fixing a muffler thing on it because they had stolen the exhaust, the cat. And um, so I go over and look at it. Well, he's got it up on the lift, and says good man, and I trusted what he said, which in this case wasn't the thing to do. So obviously, the story's going to go bad from here. So calls the owner, and it happened to be a church, and I had actually sold something to the guy before. And so I don't remember. I didn't remember him exactly, but he remembered me, and he came up, and he explained it. And so okay, so was 3,000 for the van. Been set. It hadn't been used much, and so okay. So I'm like, well, the van was like the immaculate. Okay. Um, and you wish everything that you could just look at and go, oh, it's immaculate, let's buy it. And it just doesn't work that way. So I bought it, and um, I go pick it up. He had the muffler ready, and I go pick it up, and I back it out, and he says, well, bring it so and so, check the brakes because just needs adjustment. Well, that adjustment was $800 because um, the brakes were shot. The fronts, I had to replace the front calipers, rotors, everything. There was no brakes at all. I mean, just straight down. So I had to wait a week or so to get that done, and I knew it was going to need tires, so I went and ordered some tires. And so here I'm into this thing for another $2,000. But that's okay because the van only had like 50 something thousand miles on it. It was an '02, I think, '03, something in there. So I get it out, and man, this thing just looks so beautiful. This story's painful because it almost put me under. It honestly it did. So I get out the first day, and I go to drive this thing, and I take it over to the east side of town to pick something up. And I get there, and as I'm going to park, I keep hearing this thump, thump, thump. I'm feeling it, and I'm like, what in the world? I'm like, man, I don't get it, and so I said, man, something ain't right. So I just stopped it, got a tow truck, towed it back to the warehouse, and I called my partner up, and I said, Ken, I said, he met me up there, and we're just trying to, I mean, because when you hear the thumping noise, but it was rhythmic. There was a sequence to it, and um, a mechanic was there, and I drove it over there, and they're like, man, it's the rear end. It's the rear end. It was, So what happened is that when it took about 20 minutes for it to heat up. So if you were just going 5 or 10 minutes, it was okay. But over that, it was going to start. I'm not exactly sure. And so I called the guy from the church, and I told him, and because when I got it, the van wasn't drivable actually. It was they had to put a new battery in and all this, and being sometimes you do have to trust what people say, right? So I called up. I said, man, I said, man, I didn't get the chance to test drive it then because it was in the shop, and I forked over the money. So you know, so he went back and talked to them, and they said, well, they'll pay for the rear end. So that was going to be 1,000 something, somewhere in there. And so I got online and I found one. It was difficult. I had to find one out of North Carolina. And they got it shipped up. Took about a week to get here. And then, of course, another week to get it, because they got to get up on the lift, drop everything, lift up and swap it out. And then, reconnect the brakes and everything. And so I get the van. And man, I was like, oh, this is it. I'm good for a couple years. I don't have to worry about nothing. And I take it out. I drive it around a little bit, okay, and then I was doing auctions in Nashville, so I hooked that puppy up and I loaded up the trailer and I took off to Nashville. Except it didn't take long to see that gas gauge moving fast. I get on the road and I'm like, man, this just this ain't right. And I had a 14-foot enclosed trailer, the tall. It's a little over 6 foot, so I could stand up. And I was like, well, as long as it runs good, I'll figure it out. So I made my run and I came home, and the gas bill just, when gas is 3.50, $4 a gallon, you know, 10 miles a gallon or less is not, it's killing you. So I come back, I use it around town. I take it the next week, and okay, and on the way back, the transmission ran out of fluid. Right? Not that it was that great anyway. Okay, it pulled okay, and son of a no, actually, I'm coming back from Nashville, and all of a sudden it's it's not shifting right. It's not wanting to pull up the uphill, and I'm just like, oh man, I got this trailer behind me. It weighs 2,000 pounds, and I had a little bit of stuff in there, and I'm starting to sweat like anybody else. So getting a tow with two vehicles more than 100 miles from home is not what you want. So, I called Ken up. I said, Ken, man, I said, I pulled over and I was like, he says, man, he says, you better go check the transmission fluid. So I did. So I drove into AutoZone, but I bought like 7 quarts of transmission fluid. I pour one in. You run it, check it. Okay, I added another one, but it only took like 2. So I wasn't empty, but I wasn't completely full. And I was like, well, it wasn't empty, so I didn't just screw it up that way. But so I'm just like, oh man. So I get on the road and I'm headed home, and I'm just babying this puppy. I'm doing 40 and 50, and in between Bowling Green and Louisville, there's a lot of slow hills. Okay, there's a couple good hills, but there's a lot of them. You're just chugging uphill, and I'm trying to find that spot on the gas pedal so it doesn't find the right spot. I don't want it shifting. I just want to hold it steady. I don't care what it takes. And I called Ken up. I said, Ken, I said, man, I said, I need you to come meet me. Where? Well, so, well, man, I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna get. And so I said, look, man, just get on the road, get the truck, and get on the road, and just start driving towards Louisville. And if it's that bad, we'll just drop it and put it on the truck, and you can bring it home. Because the truck, it had miles on it and it didn't pull the trailer as well, but empty would be okay. I wasn't worried about that as much. So I get on the road and I'm just, putzing along, and Ken, he goes, gets the truck, and he gets on the road, and he gets across the river, and he gets down to the 71 75 split there at Walton, and he calls me up and he says, "What do you want me to do?" And I just said, "Well, just wait for me. Just wait. Let's see what happens." Well, he sat there, took a nap, and I'm just putzing along about 50, and I made it. I made it all the way home. When I got up to 30 minutes, somewhere around the Sparta racetrack there in Kentucky. Um, I called him. I'm like, well, just go on home. I think I'm gonna be okay, and if worst case, I'll call you, and I'm just an hour away. So he goes home, and I just finished the drive out, and I get back and I park it, and I let my guy look at it, and it's like, now in the midst of all this, I don't know what happened, but I was getting around 5 miles a gallon, which wasn't good. The transmission, it did not, I don't know, I couldn't get it to 60 downhill, but then I was kind of worried about, you know, revving that engine up, trying to make it up the hill like the truckers do. And, um, after a long conversation with everybody, I decided that I couldn't put no more money in this thing because honestly, I was in it for 9,000 right now, and this was a $3,000 van, and I had spent 6 grand keeping it running, and it wasn't. I mean, I could drive it around town, but how far? And a money pit. We all understand the fact of don't put good money after bad, and I done put enough good money after bad, and I said, you know, so I talked to my guy Josh there, and he said, "Well, if you want to do it, just throw it in the auction while it's running." And we did. It ends up, I got 2,500 back from it, and I had some not pleasant conversations with the guy from the church, um, and you know, um, and I understood. So he went back, and they were like, "No, we're not even going to help you. We told you we were going to do get the rear end done," and they backed out. So I thought I was going to get 1,000 or something like that, and the church they just there you go, buddy. Um, and I was broke. This was a bad time, and this is one of those times when you're self-employed, and if you're a hustler like I've been. There's days that you don't see the end, and when it starts raining down like this, you you just sit down and cry because all you need is, if you don't make no sales, you ain't got no money. you know the only good blessing really at that time was that my truck was still running, and um, it was winter time, so you get snow and stuff, and you got your truck, it really stinks, but what do you do? So after a couple conversations, this guy calls me. This guy from this church, he was the representative, to sell me the van. And so he called me up, okay? And this is a warning to people who, you get mad at somebody, and you can say what you want. You got the freedom of speech, right? This is America, and God gave you a mouth to use, right? And I wasn't I didn't cuss him out. I knew, I respected him, but I didn't have much respect, honestly, at some of the time. So he calls me one day, and I didn't want to hear him. I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to hear him. And I know he's an older gentleman, and he said, look, Kerry. He says, I'm a Christian, and he said, I'm sorry for what happened, and he went on his little apology thing, and I'm just not hearing none of it. And he said, "I'll tell you what," he said, "they agreed at first to give you $1,000 towards your rear end," and he says, "I'll pay you the $1,000." He said, I gotta do it. I'll send you X amount every month." And I was mad. I was out a lot of money, and I'd have been better off never knowing about this man. I would be better off to this day. And this guy, he says, I'll do Cash App." Okay. So every month there's $40 in my Cash App. And I forget how long this went on. And then one day I get a text because I would just see it there and I would just wait till I had something else and transfer it out. And I'd, totally oblivious. And one day he sends me a text and says, "Hey, I've paid you back your money." And you know, at that point, I stopped and I was a little baffled. This guy had taken and he had done the right thing for his church who wouldn't do it.